Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special event with Banyan Books, with Arkaya Awareness Center in synergy with the Artist as Healer of the Indian Summer Festival and the Canada-India Network Society. My name is Ross McKeechee. I'm your host this evening. I'm also the podcast host for Banyan Books, and I'm also involved with Arkaya Awareness Center. We have four really wonderful guests this evening, very accomplished, each of them in their own fields. And I'm really excited to be in this dialogue with them. Our theme, of course, is integrating ancient yogic wisdom with modern medicine. Our guests this evening, starting with Dr. Arun Garg, who's an award-winning champion of culturally efficient and effective holistic healthcare. With his innovative, holistic, and integrative approach, Dr. Garg is a change maker with heart. He fuses the strength of scientific evidence and cognitive anthropological-based wisdom of ancient philosophy. He's a clinical professor of pathology at the Faculty of Medicine at the University of British Columbia. For 30 years, he was the medical director at Fraser Health in the Department of Medical Biochemistry and Lab Medicine, and is currently a consultant in biochemical medicine. Among his many, many accolades, in 2008, the Vancouver Sun newspaper listed him as one of the 100 most influential Indo-Canadians in the province. To promote stronger links between Canada and India, Dr. Garg conceptualized the annual Canada-India Network Initiative Conference and founded the Canada-India Network Society to build strong economic, trade, educational, and cultural links between Canada and India. You can learn more about the Canada-India Network Society, or CINS. Their website is THECINS.org. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Garg. Our next guest is Dr. Andrea Grabovac, who is a clinical professor of psychiatry at the University of British Columbia, and her clinical practice has focused on inpatient psychiatry and outpatient psycho-oncology. Since 2006, she has facilitated group and individual mindfulness-based treatment programs for mood disorder, sexual medicine, and oncology populations using both mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT, and more recently, mindfulness integrated cognitive behavioral therapy, or MICBT. She's also an MBCT teacher trainer and mentor with the UCSD Mindfulness-Based Program Training Institute, as well as a founding co-director of the North American chapter of the MICBT Institute. Sorry, all these acronyms, I'm stumbling on them. Training clinicians in the delivery of MICBT internationally. In 2020, Dr. Grabovac also completed her first yoga teacher training, and she's practiced and studied in the Burmese Theravada Vipassana tradition since 2002. Welcome, Dr. Grabovac. Thank you so much for being here. Next, we have Sirish Rao, who is a writer, festival producer, and curator with deep connections to the international arts world. He's the co-founder and artistic director of Vancouver's annual Indian Summer Festival of Arts and Ideas, where he has been responsible for introducing some of the world's most noted contemporary artists to Vancouver. Sirish has conducted interviews with, hosted, and curated a range of leading thinkers and artists, including Salman Rushdie, David Suzuki, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. More recently, he envisioned and launched Indian Summer Arts Society's Artist as Healer project, which we'll be hearing more about this evening. It brings artists and medical practitioners together to explore what he describes as remedies against despair and potions for joy. I love that. If you'd like to learn more about Sirish Rao and the Indian Summer Arts Society, you can visit their website, which is indiansummerfest.ca. Welcome, Sirish Rao. Thanks for being here. Our final introduction. Thanks, everybody, for your attention. A lot of introductions, and then we'll get into our conversation. The inaugural Artist as Healer recipient of the grant, who's working on her project for Artist as Healer, is Yogacharini Maitreyi, who is a natural healer and weaver of community, as well as a filmmaker, author, and poet. Maitreyi is an international master teacher, practical mystic, and the founder of Arkaya Awareness Center and Arkaya Foundation. For the last 25 years, she has shared the deeper dimensions of yoga, self-management, and Sattvic Tantra worldwide. She was born and raised in India, where she was immersed in the yogic life for over 4 decades through her grandfather and gurus. And since 1997 in India, Maitreyi has been given formal titles like Yoga Chemal or Expert, Yoga Shiramani or Gem, and Yogacharini or Guide. She trains teachers in an online 2-year, 500-hour self-awareness program, mentoring them in the culture and practice of yoga. She also leads an online satsang every Saturday morning. If you'd like to learn more about Maitreyi and Arkaya's international online programs, you can visit her website, which is arkaya.net. Maitreyi ji, thanks so much for joining us. Everybody, I want you to also know Maitreyi is my teacher, so I'm so excited that she's with us here. Before we get into our conversation, Maitreyi is going to lead all of us through a centering practice, and then we can get into our dialogue.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Banyan Books, and all the beautiful heart-centered panelists, and of course the audience. So I'm going to invite everyone to find a nice, comfortable position. If you need to use a backrest, that's great. And we're going to hold a particular mudra, or our hands in a particular mudra. Now, there are many hasta. Hasta means hand, mudras, and also face mudras and body mudras, but we'll stick to the hand mudras. Now, this mudra of integration is actually interestingly called the yoga mudra. Of course, there's another name to it as well. And we're going to first do the right thumb dominant. So interlacing, it's a very simple mudra of interlacing the fingers, keeping the right thumb dominant first, then we'll do the left over in a bit. And rest your forearms on your thighs and keep your eyes closed. And simply be aware of how you're sitting. A mudra is a mystic seal. It moves energy in a particular fashion. We have the mukha mudra or the face mudra of a smile or a smita. So as we smile, there are certain neurological changes that occur. And similarly, the hasta mudras also create these energetic shifts, elemental rebalancing in the system. The elements being earth, water, fire, air, space. So this particular mudra, the yoga mudra, creates integration, creates union, as the word yoga comes from the root yuj, meaning to yoke, bind, to bring together. And we can see that there are many words that have that sound. Yuj, union, unity, community, communion. So it's a wholesome communion that we're seeking, a holy communion. So let's breathe into this wholesome communion within by taking 3 deep breaths. We're going to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Let's breathe in, expanding our rib cage as much as possible, and breathing out with the lips pouted. Two more times. Let's take a nice deep breath. Expanding lower, mid, upper chest, front, sides, back, and whoosh out like a pressure cooker letting off steam. One last time. Nice deep, deep, deep breath. and release it. Let's take another moment to be with the body, be with the natural flow of the breath, and take a moment to contemplate what union, integration means for you. The great ancient researchers, as I'd like to call them, were the yogis, the seers, those who could see clearly. They were seers. And they said that this integration is not just the integration of the body, emotions, mind, energy with the cosmos, but the individual with the supreme or the all-encompassing consciousness. And they also gave us guidelines as to how to integrate. How to elevate, and how to bring the best parts of ourselves forward for collaboration and for community. And let's take 3 more breaths to that. Sukham means comfortable and Bastrika means bellows. So this Sukha, Bastrika or bellows breath releases any pent-up overwhelm from the day, be it emotional or physical or mental. Let's take a nice deep breath. Expanding diaphragm, lower, mid, upper chest, and releasing through the mouth. Once again, deep breath, even if you don't know where all these parts are. Simply allow from the navel to the top, to your collarbones, this entire area to expand. And release. One last time, breathing in, Sukham, comfortable. Nice deep breath, Bastrika, release. And let's take a few seconds of silence to stay in this integrative space, integrating the different dimensions we exist in, the Panchakosha, integrating different layers of existence, and integrating so-called opposites or polarities. Om. Tadganeshaya vidmahe vakratundaya dhimahi tanno dante prachodayat. Om. A beautiful Gayatri to Ganesha to remind us that we need to first be acquainted with this energy of Gana Isha, Lord of these little thought forms that distract us and take us away from our goal. Then we need to contemplate this energy, and then we become that energy. We're illumined by this beautiful energy of stability and steadfastness, who is the obstacle to the obstacles. Now let's gently rub the palms, place them on the eyes. Take a moment, make any sound, cathartic sound. Soothing the eyes, turning the eyes inwards, holding the intent of cultivating inner sight or insight, and gently relaxing the palms. Now hand over back to Ross again.
Thank you, Maitreyi. So we just heard Maitreyi talking about integration. And of course, the title of this event has the word integration. We're going to start out by asking Dr. Arun Garg, maybe if you can help us. You've got over 30 years experience in the medical field, and you've done a lot of work to try and bring more integrative medicine or integrative and holistic healthcare into the world. Can you help our audience to understand where you see gaps in our healthcare system that a more integrative approach might be able to address?
Thank you. Thank you, Ross. And thank you for my fellow panelists. And thank you, Banyan Books, for making this possible. And special thanks to Indian Summerfest, who is collaborating with CINS in building this new relationship around integrative thinking. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight, and I'll try to answer that question. But before I do that, I do want to say that I am not a scholar or real practitioner of either Ayurvedic medicine or yoga. I'm a student and I'm on a learning curve. But I've been a medical practitioner for over 40 years and worked in the acute care system, in the hospital system. And we have a very good acute care system. We have a very good way of taking care of our acute illness based on pathophysiology and biology model. But as I was practicing this, I kept thinking, I kept looking at that if, in spite of all this beautiful, great inventions, physical research, innovations, technology, our disease patterns, our loneliness, our chronic diseases don't seem to be going down. Or if anything, they're going up when we look at society. And COVID was a very good example where we had no drug or vaccine, and everything was left to individuals. So that thinking has been with me for about 10 years, 12 years now, that there is a gap. So this gap really is when we think of health promotion, illness prevention, and most important, in chronic care. So community-based chronic care, so diseases like depression, diseases like kidney disease, hypertension, coronary artery disease. And because my work is greatly focused on a population, public health basis, so in South Asian population. And this really started me to think about the gap. And first gap I would leave our audience with is about, in our medical system, is about real engagement, empowerment, and education of the individual. And as Maitreyi alluded in her opening about the wisdom of rishis, the self-realization. So I would say that is one of the big gaps we have in our healthcare, that on one hand, we have made so much progress on acute care, we have made so much progress in physical understanding, but we have left the individual behind. So the gap is in self-management and in self-realization of the individual. And this is where I started to see a great opportunity of a fusion of the best of the East and best of the West. Not one or the other, not the exclusion of one or the other, but is there an opportunity to bring that thinking together? And that's what we have termed integrative thinking. So thinking about self and the outside, linear thinking and abstract thinking, reductive thinking, integrative thinking. And that, to me, in our healthcare system exists a gap. Nowhere in our training we get exposed to that kind of thinking. Yogic science has a foundation more than in physical body. Physical body, everybody could see. Physical body, what we see. Physical body as biomedical medical model is based on experimentation in physical body. But yogic science takes us into what they term astral body and causal body and its various elements. And this astral body is the real, if you want to visualize the gap. So the gap between understanding of the happenings of the physical body and how physical body relates to astral body. An astral body consists of energy or prana or mind, mana, and vijnana or intellect. And to me, that is the gap. How do you put that together so all the understanding we have of the physical body, all the research we have done understanding physical body, how all parts of our body works, but how do they come together? And that coming together makes the individual together and makes the individual empowered, an individual self-realized. So Ross, the gap is in that understanding of connecting astral body to physical body and empowering the individual. And that then leads into the 5 elements and the senses. So that's where the art comes in, the sight, the sound, and the smell comes alive. And then the breath and the stretching and mindfulness and meditation, which are the key components of yoga, really reaches to astral body. So it'll be a mistake to say one is related to other. These are 2 different systems and they bring together 2 different forces. So in summary, the gap is really in just focusing on the physical body, or a similar gap will exist if we only focus on astral body. As a practitioner of biochemical medicine, and my colleague and Dr. Andrea will understand, biochemistry is as deeper science as you could get. But for me to relate that to astral body is just, I'm having just a whale of a time in trying to put that together. And I'll finish by just using an example which might make more sense if you think of symphony. So symphony really is music. And there are hundreds of players in music, but each one individually does not produce symphony or the music of symphony. They play instruments. So I relate physical body as components of those individuals, each one playing their own thing, liver doing its own thing, gut doing their own thing, brain doing their own thing, legs doing their own thing, but they're not producing music. You need a conductor to bring them together. And above all, you need a producer to make it possible. Similarly, body is the physical body, but you need the role of mind and intellect to bring it together. So both external interventions and internal interventions play for harmony, health, and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arun. Thank you so much. And that leads us really beautifully into addressing you, Dr. Grabovac. You know, Dr. Arun was just talking about the role of the mind in directing things, and your work is a lot in the integration of mindfulness and meditation, along with your psychology and medical practice. Now, mindfulness and meditation, everybody knows they're an important part of yoga. So can you fill us in, like, do they have a role in medicine, and what is that role that mindfulness and meditation have in the medical field?
Such a big role. You know, when you initially look at it, they might almost, the East and the West, they almost might seem like opposite approaches. But just like Maitreyi was guiding us in our opening meditation practice, you know, she spoke about allowing those opposites to come together. And when we do that, we experience this synergy. And we're really seeing that in Western medicine now, as it discovers, as we discover here in the West, these traditions and deep practices and deep healing methods that have been technologies that have been developed for thousands of years. And we have these wonderful adaptations now. So, for example, we have mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is an 8-week standardized, manualized treatment available at hospital outpatient clinics, for example. And it's been shown to prevent depressive relapse as much as taking antidepressant medications does for people who have had 3 or more depressive episodes. So this is wonderful how we're starting to learn how to work with the mind as well as the body. And for example, in the mindfulness integrated cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a 30-second meditation practice that explores a deep opening and even welcoming of one's own internal experience, even the difficult aspects of experience. And it's been found to greatly improve chronic pain and the emotional distress and anxiety that comes with chronic pain for people in as little as 2 weeks, and continuing improvements over 2 months. So there's so much that's becoming available to us.
So you're actually saying that really paying attention to our experience in this way is proven scientifically to have direct medical benefit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's a very specific way of paying attention. Nowadays, we hear about, it's mindfulness this, mindfulness that. It's almost like, it could make coffee for you in the morning without you having to lift a finger. It's this magical gateway into peace and plenitude. It's not that easy. And it's not about having a quick fix to feeling better like that. It's about bringing a receptive, welcoming attention to our internal experience as it is in the moment, really bringing the microscope of attention to learn in subtle detail about these relationships between the body, spirit, and mind.
What kind of impact does this sort of mindfulness practice have on the brain as well as the body?
That's really interesting. And when I first started working in this field in medicine 20 years ago, we didn't have the research studies. But now, with these wonderful machines, the technology again, the functional MRI scanners and SPECT scans and others, we can see the changes that happen in the brain. For example, when we're chronically stressed, it inhibits the feeling parts of our brain. Norm Farb, a researcher in this area, has this wonderful slogan, stress inhibits sensation. It's that simple. So what the mindfulness meditation does is it can help the parts of the brain that have really protectively closed. It's really just as a way of trying to help us and protect us. But when that keeps up for a long time, we run into some difficulties. So the mindfulness meditation can help those parts of the brain safely and gently come back online again, so to speak. And then the different networks in the brain can work in better balance with each other.
Right. Okay. One of the things that I'm really curious to know, and I think a lot of the people in the Banyan community particularly might be interested in, is this idea that, if we're holding a certain mental, emotional patterning for a period of time, that it impacts our physiological health in some way. I'm just wondering, are there any key indicators, or is there really backed up evidence that our mental emotional health is directly linked with physical symptoms?
From a scientific research perspective, we're starting to gather the pieces of that. We're starting to get glimpses into that For example, there was a recent study that showed that the quality of the intentionality with which we approach our experience, the quality of attention that we offer our experience does make a difference. They took people who had not been exposed to mindfulness meditation or relaxation practice before, and they took half of them, and half got to meditate for 3 days and half got to relax for 3 days. Everything else about their days was identical. Their meals, their time together as a group, everything. And the group that had just 3 very short days of practice with mindfulness meditation, 4 months later had lower stress hormones in the body, and these brain networks that I mentioned earlier, they were in a healthier balance with each other. So people were able to emotionally regulate and kind of balance the functioning of their nervous system more effectively. So that doesn't answer your question entirely, but we're starting to get these little windows of fact to start to back up some of what has been observed for so long.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Dr. Arun, do you have any comments on this particular area? For instance, just to give an example off the top of my head, let's say I become aware that I've been holding in my gut for years this clench, this emotional clench from childhood. And then in later life, have you seen in your work and has it been demonstrated that could lead to something like colon cancer or something like, just, off the top of my head? Yeah.
I think that's getting a little too far imagination, but one thing I want to respond to Dr. Andrea, and also just to say, in some ways we talk about integrative thinking and integrative medicine, but they are two separate avenues. And I think it will be a mistake to analyze them with the same lens. So for example, when we talk about mind, we don't even understand what mind is. And as rishis have talked about mana and chitta and buddhi and intellect, so those concepts are still just starting to come out. And physical body, yes, because we relate our research obviously to the physical body. But even breathing, pranayama or stretching, how it really affects the astral body, we really don't understand. So I would submit that as time goes, as our technology gets better, we'll continue to understand the physical part of the body through, imaging techniques, from isotope techniques, and the functional. So, but that's the functional part. But I think there is a deeper meaning of this inner mana, man, and how that controls, and which that affects us and empower us to overcome some of the hurdles diet, stress, sleeping, all that plays in there then, and it's the composite of that. So I would think we should be focusing more on these as parallel opportunities or tools. One is the physical body, and the other really is empowering the individual, so then they are more in tune with their own body and able to provide health to it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I think I could jump to you, Sirish. Your work is really in the field of the arts, and I know that you see the arts as a healing force. Maybe it's a different kind of healing than the sort of acute medical care. Can you speak to this idea of the arts as a healing force?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, first of all, it's so fascinating to hear Dr. Garg and Dr. Grabovac speak about their fields. I mean, I've just been sitting here as an audience member, just listening to them, because this is fascinating. That the arts our healing is not a surprise to us. If we look around during COVID, where everyone went, even if it is as simple as turning on Netflix every night and binge watching it, you are essentially searching for storytelling, for compelling storytelling, which has always been our species' great draw, the flicker of the flame at the campfire and stories. So the arts, I mean, I think in the Eurocentric model of arts production and reception has become quite commodified. But if you think of what your first art experience might be, which might also be your first healing experience, it's probably your mother singing you a lullaby. It's a sound made to soothe you if you're crying, if you're unwell. And it's also your first experience of sound in that way, of a song. So I see arts in that way, of that might be where it starts, our experience of the arts. And I've been very interested to look at how art maybe is practiced in some contexts, and coming from having grown up in India, I am very interested in the art of the everyday in India. And maybe it's easier to just show you what I mean. Bear with me as I just pull this up for all of you.
Yes, please.
So that is, you can see there's a woman there painting with a simple white lime paste on the wall of a house. And this is the art. This is an area of Rajasthan in the Northwest. And this is a group of people called the Meena people. And their art is very much this, that they paint the walls of their houses. It's mostly the women of the Meena community and the women teaching their daughters. And when I talk about art that is not art that is received, but art that is practiced, I mean this kind of art, where it is in some ways a search for daily beauty. It is done to beautify your surroundings. They're painting their own home. And after 2 months, they would wash this over and paint it again. So there's no attachment to it as a permanent state, as something that has to be framed and then sold. 2 months later, it's washed over, a new painting has come, a sort of permanent impermanence. And I think I also just want to draw attention to the subject of that art. Animals, which are the first subject in almost every art. When we look at cave paintings, or we look at every children's picture book, the characters are animals. We begin with a deep relationship to the natural world. And also it's animals and their children. So essentially, to me, this kind of art is itself speaking to nurture in every way. It's speaking to how you may beautify the wall of your own home, how you may do that together with your child. And in that process, the two of you create something together. And then you do that to remind yourself of nurture. And I think in all these ways, to me, this is, when I think of art, this is what art as healing is. It's a practice that you embody, that you do yourself in a daily way. And when one looks at yoga, again, coming from India, that's a daily practice. It's not simply an exercise, but it's a way of being. It's part of your cycle of how you go through the day. So I think that's fascinating to me, and maybe relates a little bit to this gap Dr. Garg was referring to, like how do you address the astral body? And I think art is one way you do that. And that's why when we speak of art, it feels so intangible, because I don't know exactly what art is. I don't know who exactly an artist is, but we know that in this process, we're able to express something and create something. Yeah, I think that's deeply necessary. And that's why I was so thrilled when, to have the partnership of Dr. Garg and looking at this thing of, we both know there is something really deep and valuable in the areas that we work in. And if we were able to bridge that and look at art as a healing force, not simply in a general sense that we know we feel pleasure when we hear beautiful music, or we know we look at a painting and feel good, but is there some way in which we could bring that to serve this gap that Dr. Garg was talking about. And you know, that probably segues beautifully into Maitreyi, who really embodies both of those things, the artistic inquiry, artistic service, as well as healing.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe to segue that, Sirish, you could tell us a little bit about the Artist as Healer project that you co-founded, and you know what your hope was for the founding of that project, and then we can allow Maitreyi to speak to her outlook as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so the Artist as Healer was born of this place in which we were often seeing that artists are put into the category of entertainment, or something that you do as a luxury, something that you do after you've done everything else with your spare time, or really as a luxury of some sort. But our argument is that it is a necessity. It's a necessity like so many other things that make our lives valuable and worth living. And COVID, I think, really showed us how people were going to art for solace. Art was keeping loneliness at bay. Art was inviting expression. Art was a way of connecting to other human beings. And so, you know, Dr. Garg and I have for more than a decade been finding ways to try and bring artists and medical professionals together. And I think finally last year we were able to say, I think there is the time now to make this argument for, can we actually see if there's a way of embedding artists and medical professionals in the act of healing? Can they be an inner healing that accompanies the outer healing? Can this deep knowledge of body structures and practice and all that research go hand in hand with a deep knowledge that artists have of how one may embrace that intangible thing? I mean, I think it was Shakespeare who said that, you know, the poet's eye in fine frenzy, you know, rolls from earth to heaven, heaven to earth, and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. We know how to deal in intangibles. We know how to deal in these fuzzy, God knows what surrounds you things. And so that this is the coming together of those two lines of inquiry.
Well, that's a really beautiful way that you're describing that, and the role that the artist plays in describing these intangibles. It seems like the intuitive and the artistic, there needs to be space made for that in science and medicine. Dr. Arun, Dr. Grabovac, I just want to ask you before we move on to Maitreyi, is that something you're seeing an opening for? Is there openness to that in the scientific and medical community to acknowledge the intuitive, the artistic, and to bringing that in?
Do you want to go first, Andrea?
You go ahead, Dr. Garg.
Oh, thank you. No, all I was going to say, yes and no. So on one hand, there is a huge challenge of going beyond physical body and acute care. Other hand, certainly COVID helped in my own journey. People used roll their eyes what we're talking about, but now they realize how limited we are, and COVID did help in understanding that inner self and self-realization and self-empowerment is important. But I think in the real medical field, it's coming mostly in wellness related to mind, slowly, but also lifestyle. So people are starting to talk about lifestyle related health, lifestyle related diseases. So it's coming slowly, but it's coming from an angle of still very the reductive part of the science. It's not really coming from that resonance, and the sound has its own physics. And the five senses of which human body is made has its own physics, and it has own impact the way yoga science talks about. We got a long ways to go on that one.
You know, what I'm really seeing from the perspective of the healthcare crisis that we're having now, where there is so much burnout amongst healthcare professionals of all types, as sort of global profession, we're really being pushed now to look at this, right? Where it used to be that the fostering resiliency trainings, the wellness seminars, they were focusing more on the individual, and now there's been some very healthy pushback to that, and we're really seeing the need to kind of bring the spiritual into the larger systemic structures, really needing to bring this true kindness and compassion for the system into the system, for the people who work in the system, as well as for the people that system serves. And on a very, very microcosm example of that, in psychiatry, we've here in Vancouver, we've had this new building built for acute inpatient psychiatry just a few years ago. And it is filled with art. You cannot walk down a hallway without seeing art. And it is such a touchstone for the people who are there for a short period of time receiving care, and I think even more for the people who work there. So it really is this linking bridge between the ineffable and the tangible.
That's wonderful, really wonderful. Thank you. Maitreyi, maybe you can start by telling us, I think this might be a good time to address a little bit of understanding about the sister sciences of yoga and Ayurveda and how they fit together in the traditional Indian system.
Thanks, Ross. I mean, such beautiful points by everyone. And if you see the Indian or the Eastern system, there are so many sister sciences to yoga. Everything is connected to everything, in terms of right from what we drink to what we think. So if you see the yogic perspective, yoga does talk about the astral body, as Dr. Arun beautifully said. And the first part of that is the pranamaya kosha, or this pranic field that we exist in. And anybody who is a little sensitized will start to feel their chi or their prana or their biomagnetic field. And in this biomagnetic field space is where the nadis are pranic pathways. They come and converge at different points. These convergence points of maximum number of nadis is called chakra. Now, the beauty of each of the chakra, I won't go into too much detail, but just to see this interconnectedness of yoga, Ayurveda, Jyotish, Vastu, all the Indian Natya Shastra, the arts, everything is interconnected. So if you see the Muladhara chakra, the root chakra, now there's always an elemental associated with it, a sense associated with it, a color associated with it, a sound, a bija mantra associated with it. So again, there are all these associations to rebalance the Muladhara or the root foundation chakra. For example, the deity or the energy associated with it is Ganesha, and who I invoked. And as Dr. Andrea was saying, it's the mind, and Dr. Arun was also bringing up the mind. Gana, Isha. Ganas are these little goblin-like creatures, but they're also our thought forms that can go haywire. So we shouldn't allow these thoughts to control us, but rather we should lord over these goblin-like, fantasial thoughts. And therefore, we invoke this energy and we evoke this energy from within us. So the association for being grounded is again connected to the mind, saying that I want to lord over these mischief-making thoughts. Now, if you look at the sense or what's associated with it, it's a sense of smell, sugandham. So if you look at usually Shiva, he's always described as somebody who smells good. The gods smell good, they don't stink. So right to that description. So the root chakra associated with the sense of smell, associated with the element of earth. We have the smell of the earth. In Indian language, you have many languages saying, the smell of the earth. So again, by having something associated with smell, for example, if you have essential oils in your home and you smell a flower, then you're actually impacting your root chakra. Now, the second chakra is taste. The third chakra is sight, and fire is the element. So if you see all the arts, all these senses are used on a physical level, which impact the astral body or your pranamaya kosha. Pranayama, the conscious expansion of energy through breath, that impacts your pranamaya kosha. When the pranamaya kosha and chakras are impacted, it impacts your nervous system. Again, we have plexi or plexus in the body, which means the convergence points of different nerves. So nerves are the physical aspect, chakra are the astral aspect. So these rishis have gone to such excellent detail, and like I said, it's not the scope to go into the detail, but to understand these associations. So if you see with Ayurveda, they say that, combination of earth and water is kapha. So if we have enough kapha, when we're born as a baby, we're nice and moist. If you see a baby's skin, it's nice and moist and, cute. When we age, there's too much vata. That's why we have dryness. Vata is a combination of air and space. So this combination, an Ayurvedic doctor would be able to do a pulse diagnosis and say your vata is really out of balance. Maybe you're traveling too much. Maybe you're having too many agitated thoughts. And since your vata is too much, what is the remedy? Simple home remedies. Every Indian woman knows that, you oil your hair, you give it a good head massage, you give your body a good head massage. You're going to feel really relaxed the next day. You're going to feel excellent in terms of skin quality, texture. So right from very practical things to dealing with disease management, Ayurveda has a very extensive, I would say, treatise or set of things laid out. So I'll just give you a personal example. About 6 years ago, I was in India. I was traveling quite a bit, giving talks everywhere. I was in Coimbatore, ate at some restaurant, had food poisoning. Horrible. I was puking my guts out. It's terrible. And then I was like, okay, fine. Next time I came to Chennai, and again, somebody took me out again, and my gut hadn't healed. So second time I had food poisoning. And because of this, my hair started falling out. Now, in the medical system, they said it's alopecia, there's no cure, and it was diagnosed as alopecia. But I knew it was connected to my gut. So I said, let me go to an Ayurvedic doctor, did a pulse diagnosis. He's like, yeah, this and all is okay, just poochie, which means I've seen this 100 times. There's something in your gut, like some little worms, we just get rid of it. And within 2 months, Ross, my hair was growing back. Of course, it was vanity also. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to lose my hair. But so what happens with Ayurveda is because of these interconnections, they see the gut-brain connection. They see the gut-hair connection. In this case, it's hair. But, they see this interconnectedness. And for them, it's very simply diagnosable. And I've seen it many, many times in my life when I was growing up, with my allergies, with my hives. So, so I'll stop there and say I would say personally, I've received the benefits of Ayurveda and yoga. And I understand it as a science and therefore have great, respect for all that has gone in over the centuries into this kind of internal research. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Maitreyi. That's really wonderful. And we're getting down to our time. We're getting close to our time limit here. The Artist is Healer project, which Sirish told us about. Now you're the inaugural recipient of the Artist is Healer grant, and you're creating a short film called Karma about your student. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the Artist is Healer project and this film project you're working on?
Yeah, that's my dream team, Ross. I've met Sirish about 10, 12 years ago when he first started the Indian Summer Festival with his wife, Laura. And they had invited me to actually open their wellness segment with Kirtan and with a class. And then, of course, Dr. Arun I had met again many, many years ago, where he'd invited me to actually speak at some of his beautiful conferences. So when this call was put out, again, I believe or I see the synchrony and the synergy because I was holding this intention for or to be able to use my filmmaking skills. I'm a trained filmmaker. In my younger years, I went to visual communication. This is about 25 years ago. And I ran my own ad production house, and I gave it up because one of my gurus said, oh, this is what you want to do all your life, like, sell soap and manipulate people's minds. I was like, okay, that's something to think about. I love the creative process, but what am I investing my energy into? So, of course, that had a natural die out. And, yoga became my path and my passion. And along the way, this idea or this yearning, I would say, to combine the two was in my heart. And again, everything, there's so many synchronies that have happened, with how this fell into place. And I suggested 3 films, of which Karma's film was chosen. Now, as Ross also has met Karma, knows Karma. So in 2016, she lost mobility through, something that happened on a boat, and she was wheelchair bound. And 2019, she didn't let that stop her. She said, I'm going to serve. And because she has the Buddhist background and she's truly embodying that presence and that act of serving others, she said, I want to support others, and therefore I want to become a trained teacher. And 2019, she joined the Arkaya teacher training, and now she's a certified teacher supporting many, many others who are either wheelchair bound or going through depression, who are fully able-bodied. And I thought that was such an inspiring way to move ahead despite circumstances. So she is a great inspiration. And the film is both to inspire and inquire. So we're inquiring about, again, the synergy that we're talking about. So the first segment is Karma's life. That is kind of in a short film format, narrative style. And then we have our beautiful doctors, Dr. Andrea and Arun, all of them, coming and being interviewed in certain chapters as well after the film. So that's going to be screened 14th July at Granville Island Performance Works. That's the first segment. And then the second segment is going to be experiential, which is there'll be a journey to heal the inner child with multi-instrumentalist David Yates. And many of you might know him in the Vancouver community. So he plays like at least 7 or 8 instruments that I know of, right? From the didgeridoo to the sansula, to the djembe, to the cajon, to the handpans. So we'll have like a nice musical journey where we, through mindful movement and conscious breathing, will kind of address those parts of us and embrace, through Karuna Sakshi Bhava, that is compassionate witnessing, see parts of ourselves. And then there'll be kirtan, and there's a beautiful sitar player, Sharanjit, and tabla player, Amarjit, as well. So that's a whole, in a nutshell, what's going to happen.
Wow.
July 14th, in person. Yeah.
Very exciting. Yeah. And just so everyone knows, I just posted the link for that event. If anybody's in or around the Vancouver area, July 14th, you can go to the link that's in the chat. Or if you go to the Indian Summerfest website, indiansummerfest.ca, and go to the events tab at the top, you'll see the list of all the events coming up, and you'll see this particular event, which is called the Song of the Breath. I've also posted the link for the Canada Indian Network Society in the chat, which is thecins.org. And of course, for our yoga school, Maitreyi's yoga school, we do all kinds of international online programs, including our upcoming teacher training. It's a 500-hour 2-year program starting in September. You can go to our website, which is arkaya.net. And if you want to join our Saturday satsang that happens with Maitreyi every weekend on Saturday mornings, you can also get a free class if you go to the arkaya.net and go to the tab that says coupon code, and you can get your first satsang for free and join us there. I wish we had like 3 hours for this conversation because there's so much to talk about. And I'm so grateful to have all of you wonderful people as part of this event. So thank you so much, Dr. Arun Garg, Dr. Andrea Grabovac, Sirish Rao, and Yogacharini Maitreyi. Thank you so, so much for your time and sharing your wisdom and perspective. And a huge thanks to our live audience, and a big thanks to Banyan Books as well for all of their support. Wishing everybody a wonderful, wonderful evening, and we hope to see you out for the event on July 14th.